Welcome to Theater Advice at the OnStage blog, where we answer all of your questions related to theater. My name is Greg. I'm part of the editorial staff of OnStage blog and onstageblog.com. And joining me today, the founder of OnStage blog and a man who's been involved in theater for over 25 years. And you currently audition for higher education theater programs. You run auditions, I should say. Chris Peterson. Chris, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Glad to be here. This is one of my favorite things I do throughout the week, and really excited to answer some questions today. Let's get into it.
And if you have a question you'd like us to answer, theateradviceosb@gmail.com. It'll be flashing on the screen. And we answer readers' questions as it comes to theater. And we'll also answer Reddit questions on the excellent subreddit theater on there. But this question we're answering is a reader email that's asking how to authentically play a villain on stage. So I thought this was an interesting one. I'm going to show it on the screen and read it aloud to you, Chris. Just so you know, I tell Chris the topics, but I don't tell him what the email is. So Chris is hearing this for the first time, just as you are. Okay. Hi, Chris. I watched the episode about the person who didn't want their family to see them perform as a bad guy in a play. I have a slightly different question. I'm playing a lead villain in a small production this summer, and the director has told me I'm playing the villain too cartoonishly. He said I need to make him more realistic. The problem is, for me, the villain is truly vile, racist, sexist, etc., and it turns my stomach to portray his character in a non-cartoonish way. What are some tips for learning how to play a truly vile character realistically on stage? So this person, the way I'm reading it, sounds like they're just really having a tough time identifying with some of the really negative traits that this villain has. They just can't get over it. They just think it's not, they just can't embody it. So, Chris, I want to ask you if you've had experience playing villains on stage, and if so or if not, what are the best ways to sort of get in that villain's head to really make them feel real on stage? Because I can kind of see what if assuming this is true, you don't want to play a villain like Snidely Whiplash on stage, especially if it's a more grounded play, even a
Yeah.
musical. You know, you right. You need to portray it authentically, not humanize them, but portray them as like a real living, breathing character. What are some best ways that you feel that an actor could accomplish that?
Well, I mean, I'll start by saying this. If the director is just saying be more realistic as a villain, that's terrible direction. And I'll say, and this is why, is that what this person needs to do, and especially when they're talking about like vile behavior. So like let's say they're a racist, they're a misogynist, maybe they're committing some sort of assault on women or children, in this role or something like that. So just truly heinous things, um, or other behaviors. It takes research. So first and foremost, you have to do research into who this character is, the evil things that they're doing, and why are they considered evil. And then also, and this is something I had experience, and I've never played a villain myself, but I've directed roles where we've had villains, and I've told my actors, you're not, treat it as if you're not the villain. You just have a different motivation.
Hmm.
So, let's say you are this character that does terrible things to this other character. Start thinking about why. Why am I doing this? What's the end result that I'm looking for? What drove me to do this? And I think, entertainment nowadays is starting to do a better job of explaining that. So it's not just someone being evil for evil's
Hmm.
sake. There's a reason that drove them to that end goal. So that's what I would start. I would say, like, look, I mean, if you're playing a racist character, why are you racist? Were you born that way? Did something happen in your past? And a lot of times, depending upon the show, you might have to create those reasons. You might have to come up with that on your own. But if you do that, then your behaviors as that villain will be 10 times more authentic. Plus, you owe it to your fellow actors on stage to be that authentic villain, to go to those places that might be uncomfortable. Because the more you put out there in hopes they would respond in kind. And so I've seen, amazing villainous performances from characters that, I'll just use this as an example, like Javert and Les Mis, that can go either way. So either you can go and be a
Hmm.
brilliant, menacing villain, who technically is just trying to has this obsessive chase of Jean Valjean, or you can go and be a cartoony version of that, like Russell Crowe did in the movies. So, um, you know,
I had a feeling you're gonna dig a Crow.
had to go there. But like I said, dig into the motivations, dig into the history, dig into the research. I find playing villains or directing villains a lot more fun than playing, protagonists and things like that, because there's just so much more depth you can go to. And that's why when you see awards being won, especially like the Oscars and things like that, there's a reason why the Joker has won 2 Oscars now, in that role. So do the research, have fun with it. That's what I say.
Yeah. To build on your point, the only thing I would add is I would keep in mind almost everyone in real life, and especially characters and all this, the plays and musicals that play, they think they're the hero in their own story, right? Almost nobody thinks I'm a bad guy and I love it. No, they think what they're doing is real and righteous in some fashion. Or again, they're a hero, but only because they feel it's their mission to dominate, whatever area that they're in, or it's I'm going to make as much money as I can because that's the way it should be, because I am the smartest, I am the best, I am, therefore I should, rule, whatever in whatever way that means. The other general suggestion I would give is, and Chris, you may think of a better theater example because I have a TV example in mind, is watch how Game of Thrones portrays. I'm not going to call them villains because the whole point of Game of Thrones is most of the people aren't villains; they're heroes in their own story. But there are characters in Game of Thrones who would be, by a lesser production, would be one-sided villains. Classic example: Tywin Lannister. Now, Tywin Lannister, again, if you watch the show, he's not a villain. He's not a hero either, but he's not. But Tywin Lannister is a classic example of someone who he is doing what he thinks is right to protect his family and protect legacy. Right, legacy is his whole thing. He's an easy character to do one-dimensionally, cartoonishly, slightly whiplashly, but they didn't, and that's true for Tywin. It's true for Cersei. It's true for the Hound. All of them. Like, watch how three-dimensional Game of Thrones treats all those characters. Don't watch how they do Joffrey and Ramsey, because they're kind of they're pretty one-dimensional, but they're one-dimensional for a really good reason, for that. But everybody else, like, watch that. Chris, I don't know if you have a theater example in mind, where there's really good three-dimensional villain or villains that they should watch, or a
Yeah, I mean,
production. Go ahead.
interestingly enough, like look at the works of Rodgers and Hammerstein, because even though they don't necessarily explicitly go into showing the motivations of villains and the antagonists of their musicals, they leave a lot that can be discovered through the process. So like Oklahoma, Judd Fry is technically the villain. But if you look into Judd Fry and his motivations, there's a lot you can build in when you're playing that character. They give you so much room to build in backstory and motivations. Rolf in Sound of Music is kind of like the villain in that musical. Why? He's a young, impressionable teenager that gets seduced in a way by the power of the Third Reich and things like that. So there's a lot you can build there.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, Roger Hammerstein, with Sondheim and Andrew Lloyd Webber and a lot of these other later contemporaries, they would explicitly like say, this is the villain and this is why he's the villain. And, this is the Phantom is the villain and this is why we need to know that he's the villain. But with Rodgers and Hammerstein, they were a little more subtle with it, but they give you so much runway to play and to cook as an actor. So check those works out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, good luck to the reader. Again, just study hard and just think about who this person thinks of themselves as. And hopefully that should help you. And I think, as Chris hinted at, the director should be telling you this. If maybe they did and you didn't include it, or he told you what, it didn't tell you how. But if they didn't, then they should be telling you. Otherwise, do your homework and go kick butt in the production. That wraps up this episode. So thank you for watching. Please hit subscribe if you like this content, and feel free to share the word. Spread the word, share the word. But also follow us on social media at OnStage Blog on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and now Threads. And once again, if you have a question you'd like us to answer, theateradviceosb@gmail.com. And lastly, of course, check out onstageblog.com and the newsletter. Subscribe to our newsletter where we give out all sorts of advice through columns and editorials. We've got, we're almost at 10 years, or almost, about 8 years, right? 8 years of content out there that answers all sorts of questions related to theater. Chris, thank you very much. We'll see you next episode.